Okay, everybody can hear me, I hope. Thumbs up. We're all good. Okay, I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 11:03 a.m. And also note that we do not have any supplementary agenda today. Should point out that we have two regrets of council today, or committee of the whole. First is from Councillor Nishikawa. The second is from Councillor Kelley, who should be joining us if possible in about an hour, but we'll see how long this meeting continues to go, but had conflicting appointments for the two of them. I'll ask at this time if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest. I'm not seeing any. Before we move on today, for those people who are watching, are going to be tuning in a little later on, you'll notice that council today and staff, for the most part, are all wearing plaid. And this is in recognition of the retirement of our Chief Building Officer, Mr. Neil Donald, who's been with the Township of Muskoka Lakes for almost 40 years. So though he's not officially retiring till towards the end of end of December, he has some vacation that he's going to be using up, but today is his last day in the office. So on behalf of council, and if you're tuned in or not, we want to thank you for your years and years and years of incredible dedicated service, and very much appreciated. And Nick will have some big shoes to fill moving forward. But we thank you on behalf of myself and the entire council, and I think the rest of senior staff, and I will say probably all of those in Muskoka Lakes for your years of service. So quick round of applause for Neil, as we'll have won't have our long service, but in recognition. Councillor Roberts a little bit looks like Elmer Fudd. I'm not going to suggest the red, but I think it's still hunting season, so we are good. Anyway, today's special committee of the whole meeting to deal with that of our strategic plan. We have Chris Loreto from StrategyCorp, and also Lexi. Ensor is also with us today. Hi, Lexi. And but I'm going to turn the meeting over briefly to our CIO and let him sort of introduce Chris, and we'll go from here. Mr. CIO.
Thanks, Your Worship, and good morning, all. When we last discussed the strategic plan update in September, you recall that Mr. Loreto gave us an overview of the stakeholder engagement plan. StrategyCorp undertook or completed the stakeholder community engagement over the course of October and into the first part of November. They have now completed that portion of the project and have drafted a report in which they provide an overview of those results, as well as some recommended changes to the draft strategy architecture. So without further ado, Your Worship, I'll hand it over to Mr. Loreto to take committee through the results along with the recommended changes. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammond. And Chris, welcome again. It's been a long time since we met, almost, I guess, 10 months ago now. Or
yep.
Gotten to this point, but thank you, and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Derek, for the introduction. I will share my screen, and Councillor Zavitz, I love your tree. It's a very beautiful tree, and I am jealous because I have yet to get my tree, and being in Toronto, I'm not sure I can actually go out and get a tree. So it's a very different world we're living in. But what I do want to do today with Council is to present an overview again of the process that we undertook to engage the community and key stakeholders on the draft of the strategic plan that came out of our 4 workshop sessions in August, and then to also distill for you what we heard and what we believe and what we would recommend are the changes that we should make to the work that we did together over August, and to have a discussion with council on that. And so I will get into the presentation here. Your Worship, I will, what I would propose to do is the first part just speaks to the process. There is a one slide that distills at a high level what our summary of the key feedback is. I will stop at the end of each slide from that point on, so that we can take questions from council, if that's okay.
Absolutely. And when we go to question period, again, I'll ask council if you can use your blue hands, would be appreciated. But I'm going to have to get you to stop screen sharing so that when we get to that point, I can actually see council. So over to you again.
Yes. Okay. And so just to remind council of the process that we've undertaken and where we're at today, it began with a workshop, I guess, earlier this year in 2020. That initial goal setting workshop was the basis for the 4 more focused workshops that we did in August to really set out from council's perspective what you saw as the core strategic elements, everything from the vision, mission, all the way through to the 4 goal areas and the associated initiatives under each of those goals. We took that piece to the stakeholders and to the public for their feedback through a series of channels that for feedback that we'll explain in a moment. We're at the point where we're presenting obviously the what we heard and what we think it means to the draft strategy that came out of those 4 workshops. Based on today's conversation and where we land on what our recommendations are in terms of changes to the plan and any additional feedback that council and direction council has, what we would propose to do is finalize the strategy for based on that feedback and bring it back to council for final approval, including setting out a high-level implementation plan to help guide staff in prioritizing actioning the strategic plan. So those would be that would be the next step in this process based on the direction that we get from council at today's meeting. So just to remind council of the various approaches that we took and the channels that we used to get stakeholder feedback and the stakeholders from whom we did get feedback. We used surveys to do 2 things. One is to get staff participation and feedback on the draft elements of the strategic plan that came out of the August workshop. We also did a community-wide strategic plan that had more than 300 folks participate in that online survey to get their feedback on the plan. As well. That's an outstanding response number for something like this. And we wanted to, on behalf of StrategyCorp, certainly thank members of the community who did take the time to have their say on the draft strategic plan. We also conducted a virtual community engagement session. We had 125 people access the link and 62 attendees who took time out of a Saturday morning in October to participate. It was an interactive session where we used a program to capture folks' feedback, and that feedback is presented in the detailed components of the report, as is the detailed feedback and breakdown of the staff and the community survey responses. But overall, the virtual community session was really well attended and it went really well, and there's some really great feedback as well. Lastly, we also conducted one-on-one or group interviews with a set of 9 stakeholder groups through 3 interviews and 3 focus group sessions, a total of 14 representatives from across, I believe, Lexi and Caitlin. We identified 8 community-based groups to engage with. Those sessions were facilitated by ourselves, and the feedback that we received was outstanding, and the details and the breakdown of that feedback is also presented in the latter sections of this report. So, Your Worship, I'm just going to stop there to see if anybody has any questions or concerns about the various approaches and channels that we use to obtain feedback from the stakeholders of the township to inform the strategic plan.
Okay, I've got actually a screen open. I don't see any councillors with their hands up, their electronic hands. So I think we're probably okay to continue on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So in terms of, what we would see as kind of the main takeaways that are consistent across the various stakeholder groups that we did engage through the various approaches that I just described, there are 3 key takeaways. The first is, it's clear that everybody has great pride and values the township for its natural beauty. But there is a sentiment and a view that, the township is at risk of losing the things that make it special due to overdevelopment and overcrowding. The second key takeaway is that when the township talks about balancing the economy and natural preservation, the economy will always win because the preservation of the natural environment is harder to quantify. So the perspective is that the township needs to take a leadership role in protecting the natural environment and truly achieving that balance. The third key takeaway is that Muskoka Lakes should take advantage of opportunities for a year-round economy by encouraging year-round tourism, providing leadership and support for small businesses, and supporting the responsible development of attainable year-round housing for permanent residents. And these sentiments were consistent across stakeholders. Fourthly, there is a significant and noticeable social and financial divide between the year-round and seasonal populations, which the perception across stakeholders is that divide is getting larger each year. And there is some comment from the stakeholder survey about what the township can do to continue to build the social fabric of the township as well. The fifth, which has been a highlight of our own conversations with council, is the need for broadband internet being very clear, and that the township needs to take steps to ensuring that Muskoka Lakes has access to broadband infrastructure in the coming years, and being more proactive in advocating for the build out of this infrastructure. And as folks know, the province made a substantial commitment in the Ontario budget around this, and the feds have also made a substantial policy commitment around broadband connectivity and access as well. And so there is a sentiment that the town should be more aggressive in advocating for this infrastructure to come to the township. And then lastly, there are opportunities for the township to intertwine the natural beauty of its physical location with the economy through things like ecotourism research and building a true knowledge economy. And that sentiment is spread across a number of the strategic goals, obviously, that we arrived at in some of the initiatives that council developed through our workshop sessions, and is related to ideas as to how to generate that year-round economy that is broadly supported by stakeholders as well. And so based on the feedback, and this is just a high-level distillation of the overall feedback, but also our analysis of the feedback by stakeholder groups and where there's commonality and where there's been value-added perspective to what has been developed by council. We use that to inform our review and recommendations to council as to where you may want to refine some of the thinking that came out of those workshops. But with that, Your Worship, I will stop here to see if there are any questions on any of the key takeaways or any deep questions that council may have on some of the specifics that various stakeholders shared with us.
Okay, again, I'm looking for a blue hand. I don't see any at this particular point. I think we may get some more on the next section where we talk about updates, so I'll let you continue on.
Perfect. Thank you. So I won't spend much time. This slide should be familiar to council. It's what distills the 4 sessions that we did in August in terms of the strategic plan and its architecture, from the vision all the way down to the strategic goals. The next set of slides will get into each of the goals and the initiatives that we had identified under those goals, and overlay the feedback that we did receive from stakeholders and our recommendations as to where some refinement or changes may be warranted based on our analysis of the stakeholder feedback. So the first, we didn't number our goals, but the first goal I would like to cover today is the goal around preserving, protecting, and promoting the natural and cultural environment. And the way we've set up the next series of slides in our analysis is we've restated what the initiative was coming out of those 4 workshop sessions in August. We distill the feedback in the center column here, and this is our synthesis of what we heard. And this is generally based on where there is alignment across the stakeholder groups to then inform how you might want to restate or reposition the initiative under the goal in our recommendations as to how to restate or refine that goal. I should say at the outset that the 4 goals that Council did identify enjoy broad stakeholder support across the various groups that we interviewed. So there were no particular issues with the goals that have been set by Council. There was some specific feedback on the initiatives under each of the goals. And so the first initiative that we had identified through the August work sessions under this goal was around continuing to preserve and protect the natural and cultural heritage features of the Muskoka watershed found within the township, including water quality. And the feedback that we did get pretty consistently across groups is that the environment and culture are 2 separate and very important aspects of Muskoka lakes that deserve individualized attention. And so what we're proposing is to take this initiative and to actually separate it into 2, with one initiative focused on preserving the natural features and characteristics of the watershed found within the township, and then another initiative around preserving, protecting, and promoting the heritage and cultural features of the township that makes it unique. The second initiative was around leveraging local and regional relationships to strengthen the response to climate change and ensuring that the township remains adaptable and resilient to the effects of climate change. This was broadly supported by stakeholders, and climate change was a consistent theme that came up, and the town having a plan and actioning a plan to manage mitigate the impacts of climate change was raised by stakeholders across the board. We're not recommending that there is a change here. There is a general support for how this initiative was framed and worded. The third initiative under this goal was around communicating, marketing, and promoting the use and preservation of the township's natural environment, including creating dynamic downtowns that highlight the natural environment. The feedback here was very specific around the water and how it's a draw, but that there is a perceived lack of access to the water for all residents due to limited public infrastructure. And so the recommendation that the recommended change that we're proposing for Council's consideration around this particular initiative is to maintain the initiative, but to add after the natural environment, the wording that states, and enabling increased access to the waterfront. And this was access to the waterfront was a consistent issue that we heard across the various stakeholder groups, and including in survey feedback from the community. And then the last initiative under this specific goal was around septic management policies and practices and infrastructure, and supporting supporting the public in compliance with policies and better practices around greater education and communication to users. The feedback that we heard from stakeholders was that bylaws and policies are often seen to be unenforceable or are not followed up on by the township, even if they are enforceable, which has led to the perspective that it makes it challenging to achieve the goal of preserving and protecting the environment, particularly with respect to septic management practices. So the recommendation here for enhancing that particular initiative is to restate it as enhance the clarity and enforceability of septic management policies, practices, and infrastructure, and support these through greater education of and communication to users. So, Your Worship, I'll stop there and open it up to questions or comments from Council.
Thank you, committee. Once again, I'm not seeing any blue hands at this particular. I see one from Councillor Roberts. Gord?
Thank you, Mayor and Chair. I'm just on the last one on the septic system. I'm just wondering if we could use a different word than clarity and enforcement. Enhance the clarity. You mean to enhance the understanding?
Yes.
Okay, just because clarity just didn't
Yeah, so it's enhancing. I think it's better communicating and clarifying the expectations, and then what the enforceability of it is, and how it will be enforced with with those on septic. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm okay with it. Just questioning the use of the word clarity, and I'll just leave it to you.
Okay, so what I would say to my team is, if council is okay, we would say enhance clarity of understanding and the enforceability of septic management policies.
Sure, sounds good. Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Good, and thank you, through you, Chair. I want to say first, I think this is a really good collection document. I think you've really grasped, Chris, this Muskoka. I think it's more forward-looking than forward-thinking. I think the thinking is, I guess, when we put it in, when we enact. And some of the pieces we're talking about here, the latest one, the communications, I think in terms of marketing. It's funny, people didn't say that we had poor water access, or at least the water access points that we have are not great. They said there needs to be more, which is interesting because from where I sit, I could get to the water and jump in the water and public water in 15 minutes. We actually are quite rich in water access. I think perhaps it could well be a point of communicating just where those parks and launch ramps are throughout our township. We have many. We certainly have them in Ward A. Thank you. So I mean, I'm looking at this document and my participation today as much as an acceptance piece. I'm not probably going to have a lot to say because I think it's all been said. I think it's here. I like where we're going. And I just think I've been harping on this for the last 2 years, communication. I think we need to help people, direct people, tell people more. Knowledge is power. And I hope that you have that deeply embedded in some of these recos as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Hayes. If you're speaking, I can't see. Oh, there you go.
All right. Under the bylaws and policies, where it's asking for feedback, I was under the impression that that was also to include site plan approvals, tree cutting and things like that, not just the septic. And I believe most of our septic bylaws are pretty clear, and we do regular inspections. So I'm just wondering if we're going to address other enforcement issues under the same heading.
Chris, do you want to handle that?
Your worship. So the specific, we did have some discussion in the August sessions about bylaws generally. We focused in on the specific issue of septic management through those discussions. If you're, and so we carried that through to the public consultation. If there, if council wants to, make this or raise the level to looking at all bylaws and policies around protecting and promoting the natural environment, we can certainly make that change. But there was a specific, and we carried this through the four, certainly 2 out of the 4 sessions as it was raised around the specific issues around septic management.
Councillor Hayes, I guess the question is, we've been working our way through here. We had some discussion. I know we're looking at our bylaws, we're looking at our strategic plan, we're incorporating that anyway. In a natural or cultural environment, do we want to put some language in here specifically about site plans, about site alteration, about whatever? I'm just not sure. I think it becomes probably very detailed on goals coming out of that. Chris, any comments, I guess?
Well, so what I would say, your worship, is we can keep it as is, or we can, this one's very specific. What I would say to council is, one of the things under the third pillar is actually having the town undertake a service delivery review, which could encompass a review of bylaws and their applicability and enforceability, certainly under this type of goal. So, you know, from an implementation measures perspective, that is certainly where the councillor's concern about being on those things and looking at those things can be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hayes, you okay?
I don't really care which bullet point it's under, as long as it's there and it's clear to staff what the intent is.
Okay. So we'll try to attack that at a later pillar, if you will. Anybody else have any comments, questions? The only question, Chris, I have at this is circling back on Councillor Zavitz's question, and that talks about increased access to the waterfront. In discussions and with people, where is that coming from? And again, you know, the urban town, do we not have enough public beaches for people? Is that what they're talking about? Do we not have enough? I think Councillor Zavitz is generally correct. Probably within 20 minutes of any property address, you could find some public access to water. You know, if I happen to live in Brampton, I got to drive an hour to find water in the city. So just trying to understand the idea of that, because increased access says to me we potentially need to open up more public access places, or is it more of a communication that we have Hannah Park? You know, in Port Carling, there's Hannah Park and there's another parkette literally a quarter of a kilometer away. Some people know about, not everybody knows about.
So, Your Worship, Lexi or Caitlin, do you want to address the intent or your understanding behind this point?
Yeah, I can jump in. So, you know, from what we got, it seemed as though people feel that, you know, while there is water available to people, or public spaces available to people, they may be busy in the summer, or you know, the majority of the waterfront is taken up by private docks and ownership. And there, you know, a lot of people said, you know, I've lived here for many years and haven't ever, you know, been out on the water because it's, you know, whether it's too busy or there aren't enough places. But I think, I think it was mostly about just needing more. There is definitely an understanding that there are public areas accessible, but I think it was just a matter of having more areas available to people.
So, Your Worship, what I would say is, you know, having an eye on how you can increase access, but but also being able to communicate what is available and profiling that is probably something that the township wants to look at. So we can amend that. We can amend the language under the recommendation to, you know, around communicating, you know, where appropriate, enabling, but also communicating to folks where the access is.
Okay, I guess I'll turn a little bit to council just for a brief moment, because as soon as I see the words enabling increased access, it says to me, we're building docks, we're building beaches, we're doing a number of these kinds of things, which is very specific. And I don't disagree that there will be some residents in Muskoka Lakes who would love to have that. I'm just trying to find, is that the appropriate words? Or I think where we had it that talked about the communicate, market, and promote, we may have been there. I know our CIO wants to chime in for a moment, so I'll just let him do that if we can.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just I guess a question for Chris. When I read that statement, for me, the notion of water access is in the context of downtowns. I'm not reading it that it's applying across the entire township. I guess that's a point of clarification before we potentially launch into a long discussion about the matter.
So certainly it can, we could move enabling increased access to the waterfront as a preface, or including enabling and creating. We can change that. I guess the fundamental issue is whether or not it is a real or a perceived issue around access to the waterfront, and how council wants to address it. All we can say is that certainly, based on the feedback we've received, there's a perception that it's not accessible, and whether that means it's not physically accessible, or it's just not accessible because it's busy and people don't want to have to deal with the busyness of the sites that are available. That is a good question, but at the very least, I think there is something to be done around at least communicating accessibility to the waterfront.
Right. So I'll just say I agree with communication 100%. It just, the revision in this particular case enhances that says enabling increased access. So I'll just park that. Councillor Robert Savitz, and then want to comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I in Milford Bay, I've had a constituent really write me 2 or 3 letters on access to the waterfront, and I think just reading between the lines, where this person is looking from is something like we have in Wasaga Beach area, where backlots have footpaths to the water, and I think that's more like that's really the theme of this person's desire. So it's to enable a quicker access from her back property onto the waterfront. As far as communication goes, I'm with the Parks and Trails Committee, and we have an excellent pamphlet or brochure or booklet that's put out every year that communicates all the public access points, and also it's picked up on the internet. So I think we know we're doing a good job in communication. Maybe we can put something more on our webpage, but that's my thoughts, is that the permanent residents want quicker access to the waterfront, and they find they really can't get on the waterfront over the weekend because it's being used, like I can talk about Bayshore Park. It's really being used quite well by everyone in the Township Muskoka Lakes. That's my input on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
And through you, Mayor, I certainly subscribe to your words. I do believe this is purely education. Chris, if I might, I'm not sure how many people commented on they don't have access to the water, but again, I want to reinforce the point. I think we simply need to communicate. Hey, listen, there's 17 access points on Lake Muskoka, 22 on Lake Rosso, whatever. I just think it's here it is. There are boat rental places throughout Muskoka. In fact, we take heat as councillors. We get calls from people saying, how come these people rent Sea-Doos and rent boats? These people have no experience. You can tell by the way they hit the dock, etc. So, I'm not seeing people denied access to lovely Lake Muskoka because we have homes here. I think it's a wonderful blend, and I think maybe we should just be telling people. Obviously, they're saying we need to do a better job, because I would not be in favor of opening up access and creating new parks and new launch ramps and beautiful beaches and huge parking lots. We already have that. Thank you.
Okay, so I saw Councillor Mazan's hand was up. It's down, but Susan, did you want to speak?
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, add what's already been stated, which I think a lot of this is maybe enhancing and promoting what we currently have. And I think that's the conversation we had. So no, I have nothing to add. Thanks.
So your worship, and what I may say then is that let's keep the initiative as originally worded. And know for implementation purposes, the sentiment here is, or the need here is around communicating what is available and better helping the folks understand what is available. Agreed.
So Councillor Hayes, did you have something different to add?
I did have something different to add. I would like to leave it in the way that it has been changed. I know that people here, when they're putting their fish shacks on in the wintertime, There's one access point, and that's on the south side of the point. It takes almost 2 hours to get a fish shack around to the north side of the shore. Where if we had another area available at the north side, it would be much easier. So it's not just for boat access, it's for access for getting onto the lake at wintertime. It's for, I believe we do need more smaller parks so that we can spread everything and everybody out. As far as our commercial is, I believe we need more commercial because those areas are always backed up. So I was very happy to see enabling increased access to the waterfront. But if the enabling part is bothering people, perhaps we could change it to and explore increased access to the waterfront. Thank you.
Chris, what do I appreciate Hayes's perspective, and I mean, we're talking about one particular instance. You know, I want to be careful, and I'll say this, that, you know, we're setting a strategic plan. If you ask contractors on the lake, they want to add commercial boat ramps because it takes them 2 hours to get from one place to the other. There's nothing on South Rosso or on the western shore or on the eastern shore. You know, we have people wanting to shut down those ramps because of noise and complaints. When we start putting in public parks and everything else, I do understand the one Walker's Point question. And I wonder if that is in a full strategic plan, or is that a one-off case-by-case basis?
Yeah, nothing in the strategic plan prevents a council in the township from considering those types of things. You know, what I would say is, Your Worship, let's stick with the original wording of the initiative and note for implementation purposes that you know, we should be keeping an eye open and be open to entertaining proposals around increasing access, as well as the communication of where the access currently exists.
Right. So the only other hybrid that potentially could be added, if you just remove the words enabling increased, okay, highlight the natural environment and access to the waterfront.
Okay. Happy to do that too. That makes sense.
Sort of a hybrid approach. It's not saying we're increasing it, but it just says we're going to highlight those environments and gives us opportunity and flexibility.
Okay.
Okay. I think that may help Councillor Hayes at the same time.
Okay, perfect. That
Okay.
works.
Continue on.
Okay. So the next goal is around strengthening and diversifying the Muskoka Lakes economy. There are 3 initiatives here. The first initiative was around implementing the economic development strategy that has been developed, including the housing, workforce, broadband, and transportation enablers of the strategy. What we heard from stakeholders is that the township should be prioritizing and expanding its economic development activities to ensure that it has the capacity to meet the goals of the strategy and offer more than information and support for tourism, but looking to support all types of businesses in the community. So the proposed updated wording around this particular initiative that we're recommending is to prioritize the implementation of the economic development strategy, including those enabling pieces, just to highlight that the plan exists and that there is a desire from stakeholders, and certainly I think a desire around the council table to actually get on with the job of executing the strategy. The second initiative was around establishing criteria to assess and prioritize desired types of economic growth for the township, particularly with respect to light industrial, commercial, and year-round amenities and activities. A couple pieces of feedback from across the stakeholder set. One is around the town taking a leadership role in setting a clear vision for the township's economy and the evolution of that economy, so that it's not being driven by individual stakeholder interests. The other piece is around exploring other opportunities for economic development, including year-round tourism research, and other eco-friendly activities. We also heard about, given what COVID has revealed in terms of where people can work, and obviously broadband connectivity is an enabler of something like this, but also what might be open in terms of the knowledge economy in the for Muskoka around its own economic development. So what we're proposing in terms of an amendment to how this initiative was originally structured is to restate it as the initiative would be to set an economic development vision and establish criteria to assess and prioritize desired types of economic growth for the township, particularly light industrial, commercial, knowledge-based would be a net new addition, and year-round amenities and activities. The third initiative under this goal was about leveraging existing infrastructure within the township to establish community hubs that support a thriving community with a focus on year-round amenities, cultural attractions, and ancillary services that contribute positively to a high quality of life. It was noted by stakeholders that there is a lot of infrastructure already in place, but the sentiment that many groups struggle with insurance and payment requirements to rent space, and that the programming available is limited. Based on that feedback, what we're proposing in terms of a refined statement around this initiative is leverage existing township infrastructure to foster accessible and affordable community hubs that support a thriving community with a focus on year-round amenities, cultural attractions, and ancillary services that contribute positively to a high quality of life. So we're proposing some amendments to each of these initiatives under this goal, Your Worship, and happy to answer any questions or take any comments that Council has.
Council, any questions, comments? Not seeing any. There we go. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So, being actively involved in the economic development piece on that committee with other councillors here in this call, I see the word leverage, and I would perhaps even to the CAO. How do we actually, as a township, leverage infrastructure? I mean, those are such key words. If we're going to hang our hat on it, I'd sure like to understand it, because I do believe that we have run into, I wouldn't call them roadblocks, but a perception, a psychological piece that says the township can only do so much. I mean, we have a land bank, one supposes, but and I know we're looking at that, but what are we as a township, and therefore economic developmentally speaking, really capable of doing within the confines of us as a township?
Chris, do you want to start? And if you need some supplemental help, I'll get the CAO to chime in.
Your Worship, I can't answer that specifically. I wouldn't mind some assistance from Derek on answering this one.
Thought that might be true. Derek?
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just trying to understand the foster and accessible and affordable community hubs. But in terms of leveraging, I'm assuming that some look at enhancing certain community facilities to allow better access, better internet, that type of thing for the community to have access to and to be able to use.
I think the only thing I would add to that, I know Councillor Zavitz isn't quite satisfied. I think if I look at one thing, might be we talk about our community centers being expensive. As I listen to some of that feedback, groups struggle with the insurance costs. We've had people like Pickleball coming in here asking for rate reductions regularly. So potentially, if we were to get better utilization, then our rates potentially could come down. And it's all a price value perspective. What other groups could come in, what other advertising opportunities. Maybe we go sell off our arenas to Scotiabank or whomever as an advertising to be able to subsidize some of the assets. So I think that's really what the leverage existing infrastructure is, to see what other kind of business we can do. We're into an economic growth opportunity. So I think as our economic development committee, we've got these assets. What else can we do with them, and where else can we make some money to help put back into the community, would be my take on the high level. Councillor Zavitz, you want to comment again?
Well, thank you. To you, Mayor, yeah, I guess what I'm speaking of more is the whole idea of incentives and things. I mean, I've heard that before. Yes, we have a need for infrastructure, no question. But I think, you know, in our sales bag, in our going out and actually promoting business to come to Muskoka, to come to our township, as opposed to say a Gravenhurst or Bracebridge or Huntsville. And again, a question back to the CAO, it's a really big question, I suppose, and not to be flippant, but you know, it desires a good look at, because we, you know, on that economic development committee are almost always tasked with the question. So, you know, hey, can you lower our taxes, or can you give us a tax break for 6 months? Can you forgive this? Can you forgive that? Let us get a start. Let us get our you know, established, or hit the ground running. We don't have those tools at our disposal. That's my sense, and I wonder if we could speak to that.
So appreciate that comment. I guess I'm going to turn it back on our Economic Development Committee to find those tools, to create whatever we have. We have the township has the infrastructure. So what else do we need to be able to implement that and grow that economy? I think that's sort of the high level, and that's the job of our Economic Development Committee. Councillor Mazan, you want to chime in also on that committee?
Thank you, and through you. Yeah, when I look at this one, and I don't want to get caught up on the affordable community hub piece necessarily. I just think about all of the different assets that we currently have, and how do we think differently and creatively to use those in the lowest and the most efficient way to try and achieve the goals that we've set out in our economic development plan. So, for example, we have our golf course, and we are looking this winter to open it up and have a cross-country ski trail on it. That's a new thing coming out of COVID, of course, but it's taking a current asset that we have and trying to find a new way creatively to use that space. So while that's not a direct, it's not getting somebody in the door, I can tell you the businesses that are in and around that area are very excited about something like that. So I guess that fits in with an affordable community hub. That's the type of thing when I'm looking at that, that's the type of thing I'm currently thinking.
Yep.
Thank you for that. I see Councillor Zavitz want to comment, and I'll also welcome Councillor Kelley, and it's timely that you've joined us as chair of our Economic Development Committee as we are chatting a little bit. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, Chair. And I was simply had my hand up because Councillor Chair Kelley of the ECDEV Committee just signaled to me that he was here. So I certainly would defer to his commentary here. Thank you.
Gee, I have none.
First time for everything.
Well, you know what? I'm just trying to get caught up here. I'm reading. Went through it last night, but I don't know where we are exactly. Okay. I'm reading as fast as I can. Go ahead with somebody else.
Officially, Councillor Kelley, we're on page 9, and basically we're working our way through the goals that we had, the feedback that we've got through the community, and then some slight suggested updates to that. We've done the preserve, protect, and promote natural culture environment. So we're on the next section, which is our diverse Muskoka Lakes economy. The question on the table right now that Councillor Zavitz had asked is, how do we leverage the existing infrastructure? So that was his specific question. I think it, and I will say I'm going to put it back on Councillor Zavitz and Councillor Kelley and Councillor Mazan on our Economic Development Committee, because that's what the committee is supposed to do, to take those assets and find ways to utilize them better. But Councillor Kelley, if you want to comment, and also just as you're joining our meeting, as Chris has got control of the screen, I'm asking that people put up their blue hand when they want to speak appropriately, because I can only see the blue hand screen. So, but I'll put you on right now. Peter?
Thank you. Thank you, and through you. You know, I think if you look at what the initiatives that we've tried to undertake on the ECDEV committee over the last 6 months, and in part what Councillor Mazan was suggesting, you know, we really are trying to leverage existing opportunities to keep people around longer. And I think I just caught the tail end of what Councillor Mazan was saying, but the idea isn't that we're going to sell tickets to cross-country ski on the golf course, but by having the golf course here and promoting it as a venue for cross-country skiing, promoting all the trails and park opportunities. We're going to hopefully attract people to come here, and while they're here, they'll spend some money and help us develop the economy. So I think, I mean, I certainly support that initiative of leveraging existing infrastructure. I'm not sure we've done more than just touch the surface of it, but you know, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great initiative. I don't think it's new to us. I think it's where we've kind of started, certainly for the winter activities, identifying, first question we asked ourselves is, how do we get people to come here and stay here and spend money here? And that is parks and trails, it's recreational opportunities, it's skating rinks, it's whatever we can do in the way of festivals or carnivals or whatever. And so I support that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think, Chris, we probably good on this page, as we've heard, so we'll continue to move on. Thank you.
Your Worship, may I just add one thing in response? I now fully understand Councillor Zavit's question. You know, I think you're right to say to the Economic Development Committee that, you know, they should look at, you know, what are the range, what's in the toolkit, so to speak, in terms of helping to attract and incent and retain economic development to the town. That's no easy piece, because there's a lot that's potentially in the toolkit, and it's spread across various pieces of legislation, from the Municipal Act to the Planning Act, so on and so forth. So just when the committee is looking at that, you'll probably want to inventory the full list of things that are at your disposal, and then, you know, be very deliberate in trying to match the tools to the type of economic development you're looking to attract. I can tell you, from having done service delivery reviews in a number of municipalities this year, some municipalities went full in on a tool that they're now regretting. So it's going to be really important that you understand what's fully available and how that matches up to the type of economic development you're trying to incent or attract.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So the third goal that we're going to explore here, and it doesn't have a lot of changes. Folks were generally supportive of everything that Council had come up with under here, was around sustaining and enhancing public services and infrastructure. The first two initiatives, as originally described, stay the same. The first one around developing and implementing an actionable recreation and trails master plan that improves community and visitor usage of the township's infrastructure and natural features, building on Councillor Kelley's economic development perspective of how do we get people here and how do we keep them here longer. You know, the feedback from stakeholders was that, you know, trails and recreation are important parts of the Muskoka Lakes advantage, and stakeholders noted the importance of the township of the township sufficiently maintaining this infrastructure consistent with the master plan. The second initiative there around developing and implementing a transportation master plan that identifies opportunities to maintain and enhance the township's vital multimodal transportation infrastructure. There was mixed feedback provided on the relative importance of this initiative. It depended on, you know, people's perspectives, but it was noted that waterways and availability of parking when accessing cultural attractions or even natural attractions should be included in transportation planning. The third initiative around maintaining a focus on organizational excellence and supporting staff to effectively deliver services to residents, obviously heavily informed and influenced by the feedback that staff did have through their survey. It was clear that staff are seeking more support. They're looking for additional engagement and more opportunities for professional development to support a stronger team environment and foster a culture of continuous improvement. You know, obviously staff support, their own support of the strategic plan is critical for its implementation as well. And so with respect to this specific initiative, we are recommending a change to the wording to maintain a focus on organizational excellence, build a higher level of staff engagement, and support staff with training, with the training necessary to effectively deliver services to residents. So really focusing in on the generic and talking about some specific actions that council and senior administration will take to build that high-performing team culture that will be critical to everything that you do, including implementing the strategy. The last initiative is around assessing the township's current service delivery models and identify opportunities for modernization, digitization, and enhanced customer service engagement. This is, the service delivery review, as I was speaking about earlier, and that's where you can capture things like looking at, bylaws and their enforceability and whether or not they're still meeting their objective. There was a high level of support within the staff survey for undertaking this kind of a review and having a critical and honest look at the organization and what can be put in place to strengthen it overall and to establish an environment of continuous improvement. So we're not recommending any changes to that specific initiative. Happy to receive questions and comments.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Under the organization excellence, the staff initiative there, I'd like to add one word, responsibility, and maintain a focus on organizational excellence built on a higher level of staff responsibility, engagement, and support staff with training, etc. I think the word responsibility is key. Accountability, more accountability from staff. And this would be for senior staff to delegate more responsibility down to the staff. I'm sure it's happening, but I think we need it in our strategic plan so we can start offloading some of the responsibilities or accountabilities that the senior management have. Maybe never accountabilities, but responsibilities. So that's what I'd like to propose, the addition of the word responsibility.
I'm going to let our CAO answer this one a little bit. Derek?
Thanks, Your Worship. Certainly that's something that senior staff are doing every day. It is part of our culture now. I have to say that on certain instances, and I think on a go-forward basis, we probably need, if we want to run a more efficient business, we probably need to look at more delegation of things that committee and council may be doing or approving, and delegating that to staff, and then certain functions can sort of cascade further down to line staff. Thank you.
Okay.
And what I would say, Your Worship, is that dynamic about who does what and what is optimal is something that can certainly be achieved and scoped in as part of the service delivery review. I wouldn't want to divorce it from the actual services and the service levels that the municipality has committed to. So from an implementation thinking perspective, we may want to note it with respect to the fourth initiative on this slide.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment right now? Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to put in the delegate more from a staff perspective. If that's a full staff, all staff's perspective, some staff can't delegate. We actually maybe need people to do more than just delegate more. And I think this is overall, higher level staff engagement, I agree with. And that's a lot of this comes back from the staff's comments, I believe, as well. Is it not, Chris? That
yes. This is predominantly staff perspective, and I'll note that it was 11 staff, but it's a fairly small organization, so that's not a bad sample. But I would reiterate my point about saying certain things should be delegated or not delegated. It really needs to be considered in the context of who needs to do what based on the services and the level of to which you're delivering those services.
Understand and agree. Anybody else want to comment right now? Councillor Roberts, are you okay with that? Leave it as this. Thank you. Okay, Chris, looks like we're good on this slide.
Okay, so the fourth pillar was around the goal was around strengthening key relationships. The first initiative was around conducting a thorough review of existing government relationships at all levels, including the township's level of influence and the other government's influence on the town, the financial impact analysis and opportunities for increased collaboration. There was a sentiment expressed across stakeholders around Muskoka Lakes advocating for it to be for Muskoka to be considered a northern district, to make more funding and government supports available, and ensuring that it and also as well looking to ensure that it maintains relationships with Indigenous governments. This is particularly important around certainly preservation of the natural environment, issues around managing the watershed, so on and so forth. And so our recommendation in terms of updating the framing of this particular initiative is to include Indigenous governments in the suite of governments you're looking to review your existing relationships with, and also looking at how designations affect funding opportunities. So, without saying specifically go after being a northern district, that is maybe one option amongst other options that you may want to look to identify and fully explore in terms of understanding what the financial opportunities or drawbacks may be for the township. The second initiative was around improving communications activity between the township and other governments to facilitate better working relationships and information sharing in support of legislated mandates and strategic priorities. What we heard here is, around key goals, particularly with respect to mitigating climate change risks and protecting the natural environment, must be done in partnership with other municipalities. It is not something that you can go it alone on, because there are others who are affected and have a role in playing in doing that. We're suggesting that the initiative stay worded as it is, because I think it recognizes those sentiments, but we are going to recommend that including Indigenous governments, just for clarity around who the other governments are that you're considering, Indigenous governments be part of that focus as well. Lastly, the last initiative around identifying specific measures that, if achieved, will improve the township's governance, fiscal, and programmatic relationship with the district. So this is all about how we strengthen our relationship or improve our relationship with the district. We're not recommending a change in terms of how this initiative is framed. The feedback was that the township should really critically assess its level of influence it has on the district, because of the financial obligations, and understanding your level of influence will, certainly help you structure your thinking as to how you engage in that relationship and improve it. So with that, Your Worship, I will turn it over for questions and comments.
Okay, committee. Any questions at this point? Councillor Zavitz. Question master.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I see no reason to isolate or bracket and therefore pay special attention to Indigenous government. First of all, Indigenous government is, I think we're doing a lot of things right now. And I was one of the people that was vocal about, let's have a look at these relationships. But I don't think, to isolate Indigenous any more than any other relationship. We have a lot of relationships that we're engaged in, and I think they should all be looked at. So I see no reason to identify and isolate if the only group that borders us is Wata, and we know them, and they know us, and we work closely with them. We have, we share Legion, we share Remembrance Day services, etc. So I'm not quite sure how that got out and specialized here. Perhaps that's a question.
Chris?
It's something we heard across stakeholders, and I think there was just, it's important to ensure that nobody's taking for granted that Indigenous governments are included in the suite of government relationships that are important to the township. So that's why we actioned that feedback the way we have in the recommendation. If it's the will of council to say we know that's implicit, then we can say we'll make a note of it for the purposes of implementation when we're looking at other government relationships. That is to absolutely include our relationships with Indigenous governments.
So I will say, Councillors, just as a comment, I don't mind it being removed from brackets. I think the words including Indigenous governments is appropriate. But myself and Cheryl Hollis serve on a committee of Indigenous leaders where we can communicate openly with our fellow communities. And the understanding, the knowledge we gain from that. And it's not just with Wata. There are a number of other Indigenous groups that are part of that. And I'm always appreciative of those meetings. As you know, we have our own Indigenous statement, land acknowledgement statement now, at the beginning of our council meetings. I think we can always do a better job. And I think they should be named in particular in this particular case, because all too often they're forgotten about. And I can say that personally. And we need to be consistently reminded that they are a neighbor and they are our partners. So, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Possibly a solution to that is to just name them once rather than twice. They're named in two sections. Possibly if they're named in once, that would make it better. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any comments? I think I saw another hand, but it seems, oh no, there it is. Councillor Roberts. No,
thank you, Chair. Sorry to be a pain here, but on the point under review of existing government relationships, on the recommended wording, and it was in the original wording as well, the very end of it, it says, and opportunities for increased collaboration. I'd like to maybe consider deleting the words opportunities for and just and increased collaboration, because that is our goal, to get increased collaboration with levels of government. I know in the parks and trails, we are struggling and we're working with the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Natural Resources on the Torrance Barrens. And just wanted, rather than just look for opportunities, I think we need to actually have it stated, increase the collaboration. So I would like to understand the thoughts of others there.
Chris, if you want to respond, I think the start of the sentence, though, is we're conducting a review.
That was precisely my point, Your Worship.
Implement. So it's a review to find those opportunities and then implement them accordingly, I think is the idea.
Yes, that's the intent, and that's why it's phrased the way it is.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else? Chris, again, I think Councillor Jagowitz's comment, do we need it in both initiatives or not? I think certainly.
I think that's fair. If we define it in the first initiative, review of existing government and Indigenous relationships at all levels, it would be inherent in the next, I think.
Agreed. So thank you.
So we'll work on that wording and it'll come back to council for final approval. Okay. So Your Worship, that's it. The rest of the report details the specifics of the feedback that we received and the analysis on it. Overall, I would say broad stakeholder support for the goals and the initiatives that council did come with. That is certainly a good foundation to build on, because no doubt, in addition to council and the administration having, to do the heavy lifting on the actual execution of the strategy, you do want to engage community partners to be part of the implementation. And so the fact that there was broad support across the various stakeholder groups, I think is something that everybody should feel good about, and is certainly sets you up for implementation success.
Great. Thank you. Maybe we can stop screen sharing. We'll go back to the group picture. Thank you. And Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, to Chris. So how do we compare, how does the township, just to mark our paper, how was this experience for your company with the township of Muskoka Lakes from beginning to where we are today in a summary piece? I know there's more.
There's a loaded question.
Go ahead.
Is this a loaded question? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
You're big enough to handle it.
It was excellent. In fact, Councillor Zavitz, we learned from you, and we've actually updated the way we approach. We think the 4 2-hour workshops that we did with you actually yielded better results than you experienced the full day thing. And typically, it's one of those things where I think COVID forced us to reflect on how we had been doing things. And so we've learned and we've adapted our own approach for work we're doing with other clients based on that. But I really appreciate the level of engagement that council has had, and the level of engagement of staff and the community. It's been an excellent experience, it's always a good thing when we can come away with having learned something ourselves and improve the way that we actually approach these types of engagements.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? I'm not seeing any. Chris, let me, on behalf of our committee today and council, thank you. It definitely yeoman's work, and appreciated that we've got to a finish line. And to Councillor Zavitz's question, we are not normal around this table. We are very much an engaged council. I had a conversation with our CBO this morning in particular, and his comment was he has never seen more of an engaged council ever. And that's a testament to our council. So thank you for guiding us through here and helping us find common ground. So with that, I have one final resolution, and that is moved by Councillor Roberts and seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that the proposed amendments to the draft strategic plan architecture as amended in the report entitled Feedback and Recommendations Report and dated November 2020 be approved, and that a draft of the updated strategic plan be provided for consideration of council at its December 16th, 2020 meeting. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? We have everybody. That is carried. Thank you. And committee of the whole, thank you very much. A great job. And the nice part is, as we've said, we've set this strategic plan for the next 4 years, so it will bridge not only this term of council, but the next term of council. And we can all take ownership of Muskoka Lakes, regardless of who or may not be sitting around this table come a couple of years from now. So with that, I have one final resolution, and that is moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Evers. Be it resolved, the committee of the whole meeting adjourn at 12:15 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy. I think we're going to go to a little warmer weather. And again, Chris, thank you very much for all your help through this. Have
No
a great
problem.
day.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
And Caitlin.